Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the show. Today is a great day. We have this car right here. I'm gonna explain it all to you because there's a lot to unpack. Fernando.
Welcome to the show, guys.
This car right here, for some of you, you're gonna know what we're talking about, and other of you are just gonna be happy that this series is continuing. First thing, this is gonna be part 3 or 4 of the Sony ES 9500. This is going to be the install. This is a Volkswagen Taos, and we're going to put the radio in here and walk you through the steps of doing that. Secondly, for those of you that follow the series Car Stereo Lab, this is going to be our new Car Stereo Lab. Let's take a look inside and we'll show you what's going on. So the first thing that we plan on doing to the lab is replacing this factory radio with the Sony ES 9500. The concept of the lab is that we can interchange out parts such as speakers, amplifiers, and DSP. Right now the A-pillars are missing because we're getting ready to do new speakers in the A-pillars as well as new speakers up front, but that's another video. We need a good source unit to start, and we've chosen the ES 9500. iData is the only company that makes a kit to go in here and fit perfectly, which is fantastic because we'll be able to keep all the functionality of the factory radio and just migrate that over to the 9500. We're going to retain the backup camera, retain our inputs, USB and whatnot, steering wheel controls, and then everything that this radio does to the car is going to stay in the iData module, so we'll be able to get to it through the radio. That means we're going to be taking this car apart and walking through the steps to put in the new iData kit for the Volkswagens. And that is what the lab is at its core. It allows us to move through a bunch of products and explain them to you and give you real world examples of how they perform and how they get installed. The lab concept was really fun. We enjoyed doing it. However, when the last car died, which was his G35, that was the end of the lab for a while. Now we're back. Let's get started. Join me at the bench and we're going to take a look at the parts that we're going to need to get this thing rocking and rolling. To install the Sony 9500 into the dash, we have some parts from iData that we're going to be using. Let's take a look at those. First up is the VW1. This is a kit specifically designed to work with the Volkswagen 2018 up non-amplified models of the Taos. How cool is that? I mean, it's even like, this is Fernando's car, right? That's the lab. It's on the box. Let's take a look at the box real quick. One real important thing is this corner right here. This is head unit adapter ready. One of the cool things that iData has done is made it super easy to do the installation by making radio harnesses that plug into the back of the radio of choice. In this case, we're going to be using the Sony. We need the SON1 harness, opening the box from the bottom so you don't destroy it. And it's this guy right here. This is designed to plug directly into the back of the Sony radio, all Sony radios. And then this will plug into our harness. And that's it, we're done. We don't have to do a bunch of stuff. Well, I mean, technically we do because we're gonna change a couple things. But for the average install, this is all you're gonna need. How cool is that, Fernando?
Fantastic.
Right? Let's see what comes in this box. First up on the top is something we definitely don't want to lose, which are the panel clips for the Volkswagen. We'll set those aside over here. Quick start guide. This is going to tell you where to go to download the app onto your computer that you're going to need in order to flash the module for this specific install. Foam here at the front actually has the dash kit in it. Underneath, it gives us the extraction tools to get the factory radio out and some screws. Pulling the foam off of the kit, we have 2 different kits for the installation depending on the type of radio we have. So this is going to be for the giant big screen Pioneer radio, and then this is going to be for your standard double DIN installation. And then because we're doing the Sony that's a single DIN, they give us the block out here to cover that up. That's pretty sweet. Let's take a look at the parts box. I like to save this box until we're done because sometimes there's a lot of pieces that come off the radio, and this is a really convenient way to hand them back to the customer in this cool box. First thing is in here in the middle is our goodie bag of wiring harness. We also have the brackets for mounting the radio into place. One of the really cool things about the iData kits is where the radio is going to be attached into the car, they're always metal brackets like this. That's because they realize that these radios are heavy. There's going to be a lot of weight now hanging off the front of it, and so they want the most secure piece that they can. Also located in here in this cool foam pouch is another knockout cover. I'm going to set all of this dash kit stuff aside for right now so we can take a look at the harness. iData does a very thorough job with their harnesses. First up is you're going to see this, which is the antenna adapter. They give you the antenna adapters in the box, which is fantastic because, well, why would they not? I mean, I think it makes total sense. This is nice. In this case, this is a dual FACRA amplified antenna. This is the OBD2 interface adapter. This will plug into the OBD2 and go to behind the radio if needed. Not all kits require this. Make sure to check your instruction manual for parts not needed. Don't start running stuff until you've done that. Then we have this right here. This is going to be to replace the factory USB adapter. In this particular case, they give you a standard USB and a USB-C, depending on which one you need. Now, for our installation, we're just going to need the USB-C. We'll still run this because there's a couple options you can do at a later date. If you wanted, you could add a power adapter to this and use this to do just charge. There's lots of options that are available to you, so we'll make sure to run it. Lots of times we'll put a cap over it so that they don't accidentally use it. And then over here to the side is this little guy right here. Don't know what it is yet, but it's in there and we don't want to lose it. That's why they put this big flag on it, so it's easy because it can get tied up in this and you never know, that might be important. Pull the bread tie off of your harness, and now what we unfold is this guy right here. This is the new design. If you haven't done one of these before, what they've done is they've managed to spread out the harness. And the reason for that is on this end is going to be our RR module, and on this end it's got to go off to the radio, and this is going to plug into the factory here in the middle. And sometimes you got to move these things. Like there's not a lot of room in the dash, and this is going to have to go here, and you got to move that somewhere else. And so they've redesigned the whole concept here after watching other people do this and cut it all apart and spread the wires out. I don't know who they were watching, but anyways, they've come up with this, which is a fantastic way of doing things. Like all good things, we can always make it better. And I'm going to show you how we make this harness better here, and let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is pick yourself up a roll of the JK exterior tape and also a roll of the JK interior tape. These two are going to become very helpful. They also make it in a 1/4 inch roll, which is very nice too, in both interior and exterior. The first step that I do is remove the Tesla tape here on the end that goes into my module. Now most of the time you get lucky and this will just peel right off. This is the easier of the two tapes. This is interior. You can tell the difference because the interior is very fleecy, fuzzy like. With those pulled apart, we're gonna cover it with our exterior. We live in Florida, it gets really hot, and the fuzzy stuff typically would just turn to gooey mess. This does a little better. And we'll start by just covering 6 inches of wire here, and we'll repeat the same for all of the wires involved. It's easy enough. Once I've done the first one, I just hold it up to the next to add the same amount of tape. With it all taped up to about the same length, I grab my plugs and I pull them all tight on one end, and then I will wrap the whole assembly now all at once, making sure that all the excess is taken up. And I'm going to work my way from this end, the plug end, into my master harness end here. I've saved this for last, but at this point I will now remove the tape at the top here, the big long piece. And there's a natural Y point in here. I'm just going to tape up to that. When you get to the very end, 1 or 2 extra wraps around there, that's going to really tape on tape is what makes this stuff stick to itself. And we're pretty much finished with this side. These 2 little pigtails here, make sure these stick out. These are your OBD2 connections, and that is where our thinner tape is going to come into place, starting at the clip side, and we'll wrap that around, do the same thing, do an extra turn or 2 on it, just so you get that nice tape on tape, seal it up. That leaves us the outgoing end. Remove all the tape on this side. Then I just stick this stuff on my workbench until I'm done. I don't know, kind of makes me feel good. Separate out the backup camera. This is not going to get taped into our harness. It stays all by itself. The reason for that is if for any reason this cable were to go bad, and it could happen, it's all by itself and not taped into this, and you're gonna now have to remove all this tape, or yeah. Best practices is just to leave this out of that. You'll also notice at this end here is this capped off remote turn on. We just make sure to pull this out of the main harness. We're not going to be using it, but it's nice to have it as an emergency backup if you need it. We'll just thread that over here with our OBD2s. Kind of stretch out your wire. On this end you have an output for the amplified antenna, which is really nice. This is just gonna plug into here for you. The reason why we've just went through all that is for this step here. With dash cams and backup cameras and all those fun things becoming very popular, the one thing this is missing is a way to attach them into this main harness. It's not there. We like it to be nice and clean. I don't want to just like tap into it or do a military style splice into it. I want a dedicated output for those things. To do that, we're going to grab those wires in my harness. The yellow, the black, the red, the blue with a white stripe, in this case the light green, which is for emergency brake. And I cut them, I know, you just cut a harness. Oh my gosh. Spread them out from the main harness. Get all the excess out of there. Straighten it up into here so that it is all nice and clean. One of the other things is the speaker wire. Depending on the harness or the application you're doing, sometimes it makes sense to separate out the main speaker harness all on its own. In this case, we are going to be adding some amplifiers at some point. What that means is we're going to wrap them up on their own, putting a break point in so we can cut this harness for future applications. For that, I'm just going to go up a couple inches. So I've come from the radio plug in, and now I'm going to come from the main harness plug here towards my radio. And we're gonna wrap it up until we get to about 3 inches. About that looks good. Do an extra wrap, just like the tape on tape, cut it. And what we've done is we've left this break point right here. And the reason why we came in this way with the tape is so that if we need to, I can unwrap it from either this end or this end to get more wire. If I was to go from here down, I would have to pull this whole piece of tape off in order to service it. That'd be a waste of tape. And the same thing for this side. I can easily get to what I need to. In most cases, I would take my interior tape and tape over this, and what that is doing is that is making a break in the tape so that I have 2 different types of tape, making it easy for me to see where I can make my connections. It's a visual change. You could use this, you could use this tape, you could use electrical tape, you could use blue tape, or you could use no tape. In this case, we're actually not going to use any tape because we do have some tweeters we're going to have to integrate into these in this installation. We're just going to leave it like this for now. Getting back to the power side of things, the light green wire coming from our RR is for the emergency brake. We're going to hardwire that in. This is 16th inch heat shrink, and I've cut my light green wire shorter. I like to cap off the end because it is still an output. It is going to get taped up to the harness and will probably never ever see the light of day. However, I'm more worried about it might, and might sucks. With doing that, we now have our ends of wire here that we're going to use, and I've gone over and I've cut these 4 pieces here. They're about 6 inches. I have a red, I have a blue, I have a black, and a yellow. And the goal here is to solder this all together and give me these pigtails out so that I can attach my peripherals to this in the future. Now, like everything we do, there's a method to the madness. In this case, I like to connect these pigtails to the main plug side. The reason for that is it causes the wire to go in this direction away from my radio. The reason for that is when we're pushing this into the dash, it keeps those things flowing in the inward direction, which is the way we're going into the dash. If we were having them come forward, then they have to wrap back around. Yeah, these are the things that keep me up at night. To prep our wire, we solder the tips and we slide in a piece of 1/4 inch heat shrink over the ends, making sure to do all of them at the same time. Not one, then solder, then one. The reason why is sometimes you'll get distracted and you don't want to forget one because it just kind of ruins everything. Solder the 2 wires together. Now our choice is solder. However, whatever your level is at is entirely up to you. Just make sure that you make a solid connection and that it is properly shielded so that no damage will occur. Once that is complete, the heat shrink goes in place. Now this isn't clear heat shrink, and it's always one of those things where it's like, hey, how far did I go in? Did I go too far? What I like to do is take my thumb and pinch the wire where I want the heat shrink to stop. I know once I've slid into there, I've got it right, and then I can use that as an example for the rest of them so that I get my heat shrink over the area. Once done, heat it up, and if I've done my job properly, my connection is in the center of my heat shrink. Pull your newly added wires out of the bundle here, grab the rest of your harness, and stretch it so that you're pulling the wires towards the main car harness like this. Now add JK tape to this end. When you're taping up to these harnesses, you want to make sure you have at least 1.5 to 2 inches away from the harness, because you don't want to tug on these wires this close to the harness. It's a good way to pull the wires out. Once I've gotten about 1.5 inches away from my solder points, stop the tape. And just like the speakers, I'm going to do the same thing on this side, starting up here at the top and bringing my bundle down. So I want to make sure I have this nice and taut. Bring my tape into that same Y area over here. Start wrapping it in. As you can see, sometimes you have to flip it around a couple times just to get the grip you want on it. Don't be afraid to do that. I've also bringing my light green wire into the bundle. When I get close, cut my tape. Now for these guys, I'm gonna start here at my solder point. I like to stack my wire into like a nice little square. Make sure that the wires aren't twisted, and start bringing them out. I like to have about 2.5 inches on the end here, just like that. And the reason why we're going this way is the same thing. If I need to get more wire, I can unravel this towards the part that I will never use. Add a piece of heat shrink over this end here, just like this. That'll keep the tape nice and tight, keep it from unraveling in the dash in the years to come. And then for this joint, just like we talked about, second type of tape, in this case the interior, and I'm just going to cover up my joint here. For that same reason, I'll be able to see where I've made my connections at, and if I need to get into them, all I have to remove is this little piece of tape here. If in the future, for some reason, I need to get in and see this harness or check a connection point or something like that, the only thing I'm wasting is this little 10-inch piece of interior JK tape. I go around this here so that it sticks out at an angle, and this tape easily rips with your fingers. Wrap it into place, and we end up with this right here. For these, cut my ends nice and flat, and I'm going to use a female fully insulated bullet connector to go over each one of these. You can use whatever type of connector you want. I just recommend using some form of a male and female adapter so that it makes it easy enough for you to plug into these in the future. Now the reason why we're using the female side of this because the male side is a male and it sticks out like this. If I was to put this on here and it was to tap something in the dash, it could be dangerous. Now what sometimes we'll do is if we know we're going to need to get into these, like we're gonna have to hook up a remote turn on, so we don't forget to when we go to install this in the car, I'll just plug it in halfway like this so that when we get in there I can pull it out, crimp it on, and then plug it back in. The last wire we have to deal with here is this power antenna wire that says power antenna, which is pretty cool. I don't use these speakers type connectors in the harnesses, so I'm going to remove it, and it is rather long and I'm assuming it's like that for a reason. So we will add our tape to this just to insulate it up so we don't just have some random blue wire chilling out in the dash looking all strange. With that done, we'll put another female connector on it. I like to use this blue heat shrink, and you have to slide this on before. It's a little thinner than the opening here. Put this into place, crimp it, and then I can put this on, and now I know with the blue heat shrink that this is my antenna adapter or remote turn on. Either way, I know it's going to be something along those lines, but because I have my remote turn on over here, I know I wouldn't do two of those. So spreading out the harness, we now have an idea of what this is going to look like. The only other thing that we need to do is open up whatever we're using, whether it be the RR or the RR2. We'll set this aside for right now. We still need to flash it. Gives you those same instruction quick start guide that comes in the kit itself. And then inside of here is some of the accessories that we're going to need. First off is a USB to USB-C adapter. That is going to be used to flash our module. So just plug it in there so you know where that's at. Then we have two accessory harnesses. 6-pin flat connector is going to be for our MPOs or Maestro programmable outputs. This allows you to do on and off things with like steering wheel controls. Depending on your radio manufacturer, sometimes radio features like turn on lights or open a garage door or something like that. We're not going to be doing that yet, but I don't want to lose this because we might. I'm just gonna plug that into the brain so it stays safe. The secondary harness, the instructions will tell us if we'll need this or not. So for right now, I'm gonna set this in the box with the rest of my parts. This next harness here with the blue end on it and the little purple end, this is for steering wheel controls. Because we're doing Maestro, it's fully integrated. I don't need this harness for anything. And that leaves us with two more harnesses. We have the 4-pin data-to-data harness. It's got 4 pins on each end, and then I have this 3-pin to aux jack style adapter. This one 100% we're gonna need. This one is gonna vary depending on the type of car you're installing it in. To know if you need one or both, that's gonna be on the installation instructions at the very end when you flash your module. The only other question we have is, do we need the OBD2? That's gonna fall in line with these pieces here, so I'm just gonna set those aside. And then we have the SON1. Of course, we have to prep it and make it look pretty. Pull off the 1-inch piece of fuzzy tape. And for this, going back to that thin JK tape, this stuff is the thinner, it's way more flexible, and it goes on nicer on these really short runs like this. Wrap it around, just keep spinning and pulling, get it nice, and you don't have to do a ton of overlap. You just want to make sure that you get a nice, and then once we get to the end here like this, do a couple more wraps just so you get that nice tape on tape. Cut it. There we go, we finished the end. It looks a little bit cleaner. It doesn't have the big white flag on it. And that is going to plug into this end here like so. I'm not a big fan of these little white flags that hang off of here. These are important for technical support calls, so I mean, just kind of save them until you're done. I don't want them in my install because they're not necessary, and there again, they don't look very factory. With our harness prepped and ready to go, now it is time to get to flashing the module. In this particular installation, doing this first made a lot of sense. There wasn't a lot of peripheral cables, there wasn't a lot of other things to check. Most of the time, I would strongly recommend flashing your module first. That way you know, do I need this? Do I need this? Do I need... All those questions are answered beforehand, especially when doing like Toyotas and Nissans and Subarus, where there is a lot of extra harnesses in the box. You don't want to do a lot of prep work that is not needed. Also, there again, you may or may not need this. You don't want to spend the time to tape this up or put TechFlex over it or anything like that, then come to find out you don't need it and you've wasted all of that. I'm gonna grab my laptop, do a quick flash in this, and we'll take a look at those instructions. With the unit all flashed up, the last thing it asks us to do is open the instruction manual. We have it here. Let's take a look at it here on the side. This is for the VW1 RR2. As we scroll down, because this is the Taos, it's going to give us the how to remove your dash and get to all the spots on the vehicle we need to get to. Scrolling down, it shows us how to assemble the kit. Talks about any information that we might need to know about. In particular, this white plug with the gray yellow wire. This, as it turns out, is our stop-start bypass. In case I haven't mentioned it, this has stop-start memory. What that means is when you start up the car, you turn off your stop-start because it's annoying. Every time you turn on and off the car, it will remember the last position of the switch, so you don't have to do that. Bonus, right, Fernando?
Oh, amazing.
For this particular install, it does require you going off and attaching a wire to it. In some installs, that's not necessary. It's just going to vary depending on the car. Scrolling down, we get to our main system wiring diagram, the first at the top. The first at the top is if you have to cut off the plug, then it goes to the more simpler plug and play like we're doing here. Onto the FM antenna, the main wiring harness. The next is step 3, connecting to that stop-start wire. Step 4 tells us we are going to need our OBD2, so we can TechFlex this wire up. And then moving down, we have a list of connections we're going to be made. Specifically right now, the orange connector, we're not able to use that. In the future though, that is going to be to retain our factory microphone so that we don't have to install that. That is going to be called the Mic 1. It talks about the blue with the white stripe remote turn-on wire. That is, and then at the very bottom, all the way at the bottom down here, it shows you the connections we're not going to need. In this case, we are not going to need this aux to 3-pin. Where we could see that is right along the side here. It only shows the one connector. If it was going to need that aux connector, obviously it would show 2, and then this wouldn't be located at the bottom. It also shows the steering wheel controls and any other cables that come in the box that we're not going to need. If you scroll on to the next page, here's going to give you some more information about wiring, color, location that you may find useful. And the very last page is module diagnostic, aka troubleshooting. If something isn't working the way it's supposed to, it's going to be located here. The only cable that we're not going to be using that we were questioning is this one here, which is that black 6-pin connector. I am, however, going to save it because you never know, we might need it at some point one day. And I always like to have at least 1 or 2 extra cables of each kind in a box in my install bay. Now that we have all the instructions looked after, we do the final prep for the harness, getting the antenna adapter all set. To do that, use the thin JK tape to finish it off, put that matching blue heat shrink on it, and put a male end because the other end is a female end. The only connection we're going to be using for data is the 4-pin, and that is nice and long, which is designed to go along with our new harness. We're going to be needing that gray wire with a yellow stripe for our stop-start bypass, so we finished that off, and then at the very end put a little piece of shrink wrap. And then Fernando grabbed the OBD2 adapter while I wasn't looking and did the same thing, taped that all up with the thicker exterior JK tape. The last step in all of this is to attach it to our brain. The OBD2 harness is going to get run through the car, but that attaches to the harness here and not the brain, so this doesn't have to be dealt with at the moment. And then our gray wire with the yellow stripe attaches here next to the OBD2, this white plug, so this doesn't get attached to the brain. The antenna adapter also is not going to be getting attached to the brain, but we'll set that aside because it is getting attached to the harness. Grabbing the 4-plug end, match up the pin configuration. No 2 plug inputs are the same, so there's no way that you can get this wrong. I know there's a way you can get it wrong, but I'm hoping there's no way you can get it wrong. There's a green connector that goes into a green input. If you'll notice, there's other connectors here that are different colors. For this install, they don't matter. And then there's only one big connector here, and that finishes off that whole input. The last connection we need to make is our data to data connection, and that comes over here next to the green plug and goes into the black 4-pin connector over here. And what I like to do is pinch it into the back like this, and you can use any means you'd like to finish this harness up. Some people I know like to use the tape to put little rows of tape on it, kind of like the factory had it. That works. Flipping it around, grabbing our end here at the radio. This is where that backup camera can now be brought into the harness using zip ties, because if we need to, we can just remove those. And that's kind of like why I like to use zip ties in this application, is that anything I do here can quickly be removed and added back into the harness as needed. Now you don't have to go super close on the zip ties. You actually kind of want to keep them a farther apart. I sometimes get carried away, it's okay. But yeah, a good distance here is not bad because you want some flexibility in the cable itself. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes going a little heavy on these things is not the best idea. The other thing I'm not going to bring into the harness is the speaker wires, because like I said, we're going to be changing those. So just keep my wires away from that. We'll keep that all by itself. Keep untangling the wire as you go. The other thing you want to make sure is to not put zip ties over your solder points. It's a bad practice, don't do that. But before and after it are okay. The other thing is I don't like to zip tie the connection all the way through to here. I want these to be loose because they're going to be going in different places on the back of the radios. When trimming your zip ties, don't just use regular cutters. It's a good way to kill yourself because these things are super sharp and they will slash you like the hash slinging slasher. Grab our 2 blue ends, make the connection, and there again, I like to leave this loose because this is going to have to go like this. And there we go, our harness is all prepped and ready to get into our Taos lab of Fernando's. Now parts of the radio that need to be put into place. Our hands-free microphone will need to be run. We like to put this up by the mirror. Our GPS antenna will also need to be tucked up into the dash. And these are all gonna get placed into the vehicle. When taking these dash panels off, I'm gonna tell you right now, most modern cars use these annoying little clips that just go pew, shoot into the dash. So if that's the case, you may wanna head over to Amazon and pick some up for yourself or just get ready to go on a hunt to find these things. Right now, Fernando does have a rattle in his dash because he had to have the factory radio in this replaced once from the dealer because it just died. Hey, there again, factory, oh no. So yeah, that's the thing. That's one of the reasons why we definitely want to get out as opposed to trying to integrate into it because it's just a bad platform to start with. This shiny piece here, it's like you need to really tug on it. We are going to be putting some sound treatment on it before we put it back together. Hopefully that is going to solve all the rattle issues that we have. The first step is to remove this side panel over here. Pry tool gently pry it into the gap, and then it will pull off. Fortunately, this one does not have any of those clips. They're all actually built into the panel, so be very careful when pulling this off because this does not have replaceable clips. If you tug too hard, you can break some of these, so just go slow and approach it from different angles if you need to. Sometimes you can take a right angle pick tool and come in and pull these clips if they're giving you a hard time. Next is to get this guy off. This is the killer right here. This thing is gonna take a minute. Just go slow, start at this end, obviously. Definitely one of the hardest dashes I've ever had to take off in my life.
Right?
Yeah, this is incredible. It hurt a lot. I mean, this is a combination of using fingertips and pry tools, and it's ridiculous. It comes like this, and then it's gonna stop because there's a hook in the back. So now you have to slide it towards the driver's side, and then it will come off. There's physically no clips on it. There's no little white clips. There's no anything. It is just, and there's one bent here where they put it back together last time. There's all these just little things here that clip into all of these metal ones. It's an obscene amount. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, plus 4 across. So 17 clips holding on one piece of plastic. It's ridiculous how much this has attached to it. And I think I figured out why his car was rattling, is that this one here in the top corner is broken off from the last time this was taken apart. Not the end of the world. We can easily reattach it, which we will. But as you can see, even that, it's like not wanting to give up the ghost. It doesn't want to come out. Here's the problem with this. This is a 2022. If we're doing this install in, let's say, 2026, which is, the chances of this not just shattering into a million pieces, like, it's pretty bad. I feel like this is just going to be an issue for us going forward, but that's usually the case. I mean, that's it. But we got the one, and it's just held on by these two little tiny thin, so it's like when the clip in the dash is better built than what mounts this onto the actual piece, you're gonna run into some problems. This one here is also loose, so we'll reattach those, get this all fixed up so that it'll go back in the way it's supposed to. Here's a bent one here where they put it in last time. Actually, there's two bent ones here. This whole side is bent. Yeah, these are all supposed to be straight and they're all crooked. That could be why he was getting a rattling sound. So this clip is bent. This was the dealership, by the way, that replaced this radio. Yeah, all these clips around the radio are screwed up from when they did this. That's fantastic. And I know some of you are gonna watch and say, I take it back and have them give you a new one. Good luck. Good luck at that. In the kit is the radio extraction tools. They're designed to go right here. There's no like pocket for it, it's just a little indentation, and you can see there's a little metal area here that these are just going to go into. It should look just like this. You could see right there that little metal clip that needs to get pushed out of the way. That is the locking mechanism. And there's 1, 2, 3 more of them to attach to. With all 4 of those in place, the radio easily slides out. Pull it as far out as you can. Have some kind of a blanket or a towel or something ready to set down on your dash here so you can get this harness out. It also helps to have a little flathead screwdriver. Start with the big power plug. There's a little clip on it that just pinches on the bottom here, and then the arm will swing up. The FM antenna, there's a little white clip in the way. You just pull it back away from the unit, and that will allow you to push down on it. You can use a flathead to help get it off. The Sirius XM is the orange one. Push in the little tab, and then the unit will lift. And now we've removed the whole radio. Set this someplace safe so you don't scratch it or do any damage to the screen. Now up until this point, we haven't actually removed any screws or anything like that from the dash. Now we need to, because we have to get these 4 screws out of place. These are T20s, to remove this whole bucket out of the dash. For that, we like to grab one of these little totes we picked up from Target. Now, according to the instructions, they would like us to start cutting some of this area in here to make room for it. I'd like to just take this out altogether. To do that, it is snapped into the gauge cluster, so we're gonna have to remove a few more pieces than what the instruction says, but I feel it's worth it. Cutting this on the bench just makes a little bit more sense. The first piece that we need to get rid of is the gray trim here across the bottom, which is okay because we wanted to add some sound treatment. It uses the same exact pins that this piece uses, so as you can imagine, they are going to be a little bit trying to get out. Not too bad. And there again, way too many. So originally I had thought that the gauge cluster was in the way of this. It's not. It's just get this piece out of the way, and now this whole piece will slide right out just like that. As you can see, it has this weird shape to it. None of this back area is needed. The plan is to take this over. We'll just trim it like right here at this bend. And that'll give us a nice double din style opening for this. And now we have like tons of room in the dash to do anything we want. This particular vehicle, dude, this has a center channel. I don't know if it's hooked up. I mean, it's plugged in.
But maybe it's the
It could just be a sum of left and right, like they do in the Toyota.
Bluetooth?
No, I mean, I don't know. I've never heard your Bluetooth in here. But either way, it has a speaker in here. This particular vehicle has a place for a center channel speaker, and at some point we are going to put a center channel in here, because why would we not? Removing that can gave us a ton of room. We can cut it, make it work a lot better. We're moving on to the center console area because we have to get the factory USB location out. Referring back to our laptop here with our instructions on it, it shows us removing the left and right side panels of the lower dash, and also removing the top of the gear shifter here. There's a screw all the way in the back, all the way deep into here on both sides that needs to come out. With that done, this whole side panel will basically slide back. There's these little tongues, finger things that slide in. So you slide the whole unit back on both sides, and then you can get it out of the car. Wow.
Dude, can we put a subwoofer inside?
Hi! There's a lot of room up underneath this here, which is cool. For this silver trim that is around the gear shifter, it'll just pull up. It's one of the few things in the car that easily enough to come up. Just has some really basic clips holding it in place, which is nice and refreshing for a change. Underneath it is two more of the T20s. And the nice thing is that all of these T20s are the exact same T20, so you do not have to remember where this stuff came from. Remove two T20 bolts and remove panel and disconnect harness. Okay. This whole thing should come up. To get the gear shifter trim out, grab it in a nice solid spot like right here and pull up vertically the whole way. Turn the boot sideways and tuck it through the hole. There are some harnesses on here that can be removed. I have a red one on my side, and there's two black harnesses on the driver's side. With that unclip, it pulls right out. Now this is the push to start button, so at this point you're not going to be doing anything else in this car that requires you shifting gears or anything like that. I can see it better from this side. Actually, if you hold the light, because I don't have that thing in the way here.
Okay, let me hold this. Okay.
Perfect. Here, move your hand. All right, getting the USB out is kind of kludgy. There's two clips along the bottom, two clips along the top that you have to push down. The ones at the top are very hard to get to, the ones on the bottom are easy. The panel essentially just kind of falls apart in your hand, which is okay. It's not like it's breaking, it's just coming apart, which should make it easier for us to get to those top screws. Okay, got the top.
It gotta be this side.
Got this side.
This side?
Okay. Good job. Oh, you let go.
No, because I'm holding it on this side.
No, that's...
You see, like...
Yeah. Right. This is it here. Okay, there's actually 6 clips, not 4. And they suck. They basically suck. You're gonna have a lot of fun getting this out. I don't know whatever way to make it any better. It just stinks. Tool that helped is a really long pick tool. So you can get up in there and push those things down. 2 people, obviously best way to go at this. If you're one, my guess is you're just gonna manhandle the crap out of it until it comes out of the dash. But okay, we have all the pieces apart that we need to get apart for this installation. Join me on the bench and we'll start putting together the dash kit in order to get this into the car. In the box we saw that there was 2 dash bezels. This is for the floating screen Pioneer, which we're not using, and this one is for everything else. We were doing a double din. There is a bunch of screws on the back side here to remove this. If we wanted to put the radio at the top or bottom, this just unscrews and is designed to flip, so it will go either way. The metal bracket here has a left and a right on it, and it has these 2 lips, or one on bottom, one on top. And just in case you were curious, on the back side here that you will be looking at, it does say top. The easiest way I've found to get this on is to flip this shiny side down, make sure there's something on there to protect it, and line it up so that those 2 lips are on the inside of the dash kit, and simply push it into place. Then grab the bag that has the 4 silver screws in it, grab yourself a Phillips screwdriver, and tighten them down. I strongly recommend not using a drill for this. These are really tiny screws, and really a drill might overpower them, and then you'll strip it out, and that would be unfortunate. If you're undecided on whether this should be on the top or bottom, don't put all 4 of these screws in, just put 2 in just to hold it in place. That way you can make all your adjustments and get it the way you want it. This is the kit here. The really cool thing is this uses those same clips from the factory radio. They're on this, meaning you're not taking them off the factory radio, but this is going to clip into it. And to demonstrate that, here is the bezel. We cut it off at that line we were talking about. Also sanded everything smooth. So we have this nice trim now, and this will screw back in. It sits like this, and this is going to come into it, and just like that, lock into place. And then our other bezel will go over the top of this and hold everything in place. If you're thinking, oh man, I could just do this, put it in, remember these screws are actually covered up by this kit, so definitely don't want to pre-build it all assembled. And with it out, we can easily just push these levers out of our way. The brain for our 9500 gonna sit like so. This will come over the top. And right away I figured there's gonna be a problem. On the old school chassis like this, there are these 2 teeth located here and here and here and here. These teeth are designed to keep the single DIN radio in the cage. Unfortunately, this is also the width of said cage, which means that this is going to get in the way if we're trying to slide it in from the back side, which is what most of us would do in a double DIN application. To remedy this unfortunate situation, there's 2 ways we can get around that. Easy enough, pull these screws back out, it's only 4 of them, and we'll put it in a different way. Or, if you're creative, daring, and you have a grinder, you can grind these off. I don't recommend doing that. So now we'll slide it in from the front like so. See how it's holding the radio? Yeah. Flip it back over. So now we'll end up with it like this, but we do need to put those screws back in, which is going to be a little bit more difficult because we have to have that radio in place. When you're doing one of the plastic style kits, this isn't really a big deal because they're plastic and they'll get out of the way. When doing a metal kit like this though, it is a little bit more unforgiving. So I'm gonna take my own advice and only put 2 screws in for right now. Putting the other 2 back into the bag so I don't lose them. This uses a machine screw that comes in the Sony radio. It's not a coarse screw. Line this up, find your screw holes, and add in your screws. We'll go medium tightness on that side for right now, so we can get the second screw in on the other side. Push it into place. Now we can tighten that up, tighten that one up. Check our fitment on the front. Make sure it is centered and looking good. And then add in our second screw here at the top. This will keep the radio from twisting. Unlike plastic, when you use a metal dash kit, you can really get in there and tighten this thing up because it's not crushing the plastic, it's metal on metal. So you want to make sure that you get these super tight, and then it just like, yeah, it becomes one with the piece. And there we go, we have it one with the piece. Looks good. This is sitting in about 1/8 of an inch. It looks very clean. Now we'll grab our screen. This is going to be not a permanent fixture right now. And the reason why is this screen is bigger than this dash kit. That means I'm gonna have to put this on after it's in the dash. I gotta still get that front bezel on around this and it's not worth the headache. Getting this to where it needs to be located and then removing it, the best move to make. We have it right now to where it is pushed all the way in. The only problem is right now it is sitting up really high in the dash, which I don't think Fernando wants to do. For that, I am going to remove these 2 side screws and lower the unit into place. That is the lowest it will go. How low do we want this thing? I mean,
that's the lowest?
That's the lowest it'll go. I mean, unless I take this down here if I flip it and put this down here, then it will obviously go lower because this will be my new point. So I could get it 2 inches lower and then maybe go up with it.
Yeah, that would be good.
So is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
Did I mention how much you suck? All right, after you just heard, after getting it down as low as we could go, he would still like it to go lower. And just like we talked about, we will now remove these 2 screws. Now the bonus is if you're watching this and you're putting one of these in here, then you'll already know that you need to do this. These screws are not a 2 head, it's a 1 head, and there's a whole bunch of them. Fortunately, they're very short. There we go. Flip it like so. Now that is the top. Put our radio back into place. Now this might seem like an excessive amount of work, just trying to make sure that the radio is perfect in the dash. But keep in mind, the radio is what everyone is going to be looking at. No matter how pretty your harness is or how nice you've zip tied things into place or whatever you've done, it really doesn't matter because all they're seeing is this guy. Spending the extra time on this definitely makes more sense than spending any time anywhere else. Let's go take a look and see how this fits in the car and decide if we made the right move. So you want it low like that?
Yeah.
Do you want it lower? I mean, technically it can come down.
Correct.
As low as
just
you
like
want.
this. Yeah.
So like the top.
Just like the
top
top of the same
same height.
Same height. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no buttons here. So I don't think this will get in the way of the silver piece or the gray piece.
Oh, that's a good question.
No, I don't think it will. All right, this is the plan for right now. Let's put it here. With the confirmation of where we want to mount this, I've put in those 4 screws to lock this back in place. The last thing to do is add in the little trim panels for it. These are going to slide over it just like this, and that finishes off the look of this radio. The last thing I want to do is make sure that when this goes into here, it's going to sit just like this, that I can get my screws into this location. In some cases there are pieces that hang over it and whatnot. The other thing I'd like to do is see if I can slide this back any. Now doing that is going to open up viewing from the left and right, but it might be worth it because I can go back at least another 1/4 inch. Actually I can go back more. So if I slide this radio back as far as it can and this as far forward as I can get it, I can still get my screwdriver into these spots, and where it's stopping is right on those clips that were in the way. Tighten that down. See where that is at. So actually, looking at it from left and right, you really don't see into it because there is stuff still in the way. The next step is to make sure I have room in the dash for that. In order to test that, I will put it back into its mount and we'll tuck her back in and see if this fits into the car this way with this moved back that extra 1/2 inch. And the car definitely doesn't like me doing that. It is definitely getting in the way.
Which one?
Air conditioner.
Really?
Yep.
What about this?
No, I already cut all that off. It's sitting on the air conditioner.
So it has to be up.
Well, I've slid it back. I was trying to get it to slide back some so it doesn't stick out as much. But it's now, it's
hitting this.
No, it's hitting this.
Really?
Yeah. It's not even getting in that far. All right, let me slide it back out and see if that changes anything. You can't always have your cake and eat it too. Okay, we've ran into some problems. Let's head back over the bench and I'll explain what's going on. All right, so here is the dilemma that we have in moving the radio to the bottom like we wanted to do. And when I test fitted it, I didn't test fit it with this cage on it. So that was definitely my mistake. It happens. Because of that, what we're running into is that this piece used to taper up like this to get around the air conditioner. I didn't think about that, I screwed up. What we're now looking at is I would have to move this back up to the top, but we don't want to do that because we can't get it down low enough. And so that means we are gonna have to modify this dash bezel to mount it the way Fernando would like it in his car, which is perfectly fine. I think that's gonna be the better move. If you're doing one of these for your car and you don't wanna deal with all that, which of course you don't, just leave it at the top and proceed with the installation as we normally would. We are going to move on to the next part of this installation, which is we're gonna change this so that we can move this radio up here to the middle, and yeah, that seems to be what works for me right now. And in doing so, then we can move this back further. Yay! It's time to treat this like a lab and go full deep. That doesn't change anything as far as what you need to do in order to get this into the car. Just know that if you want to put this in, it needs to stay up here at the top, unless you have something like an L chassis or something that has a short chassis, or you're redesigning the way this is gonna fit like we're going to do. And so for that means it's time to remove some screws and have some fun. We made some modifications and we got it to where it will fit the way Fernando would like it to fit in the dash. Let me explain what we did to kind of give you an idea of what went into it. The first thing was centering the radio into the kit and drilling some new holes. Not the funnest thing. However, if you line the radio up with the bottom of this, which is the top of this one, that'll get you right where the radio needs to be so that it can get pushed back into the dash. Next, we headed over to the laser and we cut a black piece of 1/8 inch acrylic that matches all of this, and that allowed us to sink it in a whole bunch. Then I went back to the radio, adjusted it to its maximum height, and now this will slide in, and it's a lot nicer. It's pulled in as far as we can and down as much as we can get it, and of course from the side it looks nice and sexy. Let's take a look at the wiring harness before we put this into the car, because we're gonna make some changes to it. One of the cool features we learned about in the video where we showed you the operating system was the fact that this will do tweeter, mid, and subwoofer, an active front set, and we want to do that. Even though the car didn't come with it, we're gonna add in some tweeters. To do that though, we need to modify this portion of the harness that we left exposed. The first thing is going to be just cutting the whole thing in half. On the car side, we will not be using the green and purple. Those are the rear speakers. We'll just fold those back out of the way and add a zip tie to the harness so that they're just not there. There is no power coming from the speakers, so there's nothing electrical on this side. That means we don't need to cap these off. Now, how this system is designed to work is that the white pair and the gray pair are going to be our tweeters, and our green pair and purple pair are going to be our mid bass. And how this is going to connect back to the factory, our green pair is going to go to the white pair and the purple pair is going to go to the gray pair, matching up solids and stripes. Now, because this is not going to be the only time we're going to disconnect those, we are going to use our bullet connectors on this so that at some point we can come back in here and modify it yet again. If you are doing something like this and you want it to be permanent, use solder or your connector of choice. Now make sure you use the female end on the radio side because this has power, and on the car side you can use the male end. Those connections are made. Lastly, I have to add the females to my white and grays so that we connect them to the car side. With this modification done, it is time to get this into the car. Let's go take a look at all the peripherals that Fernando installed and see how he did that. The first thing we're going to look at is the gray-yellow wire, which is for the stop-start. This little guy with the white plug. Where did you hook it up?
This one in the instructions says go to the stop start plug and hook it up to the brown purple wire. The pin is number 5. The plug goes like this. You can see the number 1 in here and goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the plug that you're going to use. Brown, purple. It doesn't say to cut it. Says to top it. The next thing I did was running my OBD2 port, and this goes all the way to the top. I plugged iData USB and USB-C into the factory location. Those run the same thing in that side.
So did that just plug in from the back side?
That just clips in. You don't have to do any modifications. It clips. It is so simple. I also ran my microphone, goes all the way to the top of the headliner, attaches to the factory wiring harness, and then across to the dash. Also, the GPS antenna goes, it's a little bit difficult because this is all sealed, but if you put your hand and reach all the way to the back, you kind of feel this part right here, and it's all plastic, so you attach it to the top of the plastic, and you're good to go.
With all the peripherals wired up, the dash kit is done. It's time to get the radio into the dash. So we showed you how we modified the wiring harness because we're adding A-pillar speakers here. This car didn't have them. The other thing he had to run was these tweeter wires right here that are gonna hook up to those white and gray outputs. The tweeters, we'll show you how we do that in another video, so stay tuned for that. It's time to start putting all of this back together and getting it into the dash. The first piece in the puzzle, putting it back together, is the piece that we trimmed out, which is that main mount for the radio right here. Let's grab that in our Torx and get that screwed into place. First step is adding the male terminals for the other end of the harness to the tweeter wires that we ran over here to the sides of the dash. Fernando's already put our mounting bracket back into place, returning the 4 screws to it. Next is going to be our harness. Starting with the main power plug, clip it into place. The white clip for the stop start. OBD2 black connector. Moving down to our connection point here. Connect our tweeters into the harness. The antenna connection. Then we want to make sure we have the microphone and the GPS antenna and the USB here where we can get to it. With all those connections made, start tucking our module into the dash. Making sure to just keep all our connectors right here. Start with the radio harness, the Bluetooth mic, GPS antenna, iData connection, USB-C. The last to go in is our backup camera. For that, we add in their RCA and we find the yellow connector that says rear camera in. And that is everything for this particular basic radio install. Now we just need to get everything tucked into the dash. Check to make sure all 4 of your clips are attached and locked into place. The next step is to put this area back together here so that we can test the radio. The reason for that is this has to plug in. This is already plugged in and there's really nothing else on here that plugs in. So once we get this attached, we can slide the screen into place, turn it on, and make sure everything, all the buttons and all that stuff work before we try to put this, oh my god, so hard piece back on. This has the 3 clips. The one for push to start, the parking brake, and the stop start over here on this side. Make sure that everything is plugged in nice and tight. Push it back down into place and replace the 2 20mm we took out. Slide the boot back in. Make sure you get the click and then tuck it back down into place. Make sure your rubber mat is still functional. And from there, I can slide the screen in now. All right, that looks nice. Hit the push to start. Hit the home button to get the unit to power up. This radio is still configured from when we had it on the bench for doing the demo, so my phone automatically paired up to it. So we are getting sound out of the mid bass. Hit my home button, go back to radio. And now I can test my volume. Volume here. Volume there. Track is working. What's the weather like today?
The forecast is calling for rain today.
So our push to talk works. Hey, could you hop in and put in reverse for me? We got our backup sensors, we got our noisy stuff going on. So everything is doing what it's supposed to. We can look at the sensors or go back to the camera. All right, let's shut that off. Woo! That was exciting. Let's go back to home, apps, rear cam. So this is telling us that the factory camera only has power when it is in reverse. We're gonna lose that feature by retaining the factory camera. All right, the last thing I want to do is go into settings and go into system, scroll down here where it says factory reset. We're gonna reset it. because we don't know what we did to this when we were playing on the bench, and it's just best to start over. At this point, what you're going to want to do is make sure that your radio is up to date. More than likely, you're going to need some form of a software update. Here we need to change our speaker configuration to front two-way. We'll select OK. Please confirm that you want to change. All sound and volume settings have been reset. We know that from looking at it earlier. All right, everything else is good. We'll select OK. We'll select close. Go into our settings, sound, advanced, crossover, and we will see our high pass filter. We're gonna turn this off because right now we don't have a subwoofer. And we'll go to our tweeter. This is a Morel tweeter that we're putting in, so we're gonna cross it over at 2.5. And that means we'll bring our low pass crossover for our mid bass also down to 2.5. Right now we'll leave them at 12 dB, and then we'll turn them up to 24 dB. We'll exit out of there, exit out of there. With that done, I'll leave the rest up to him to play with. I'm gonna shut the car off. We can pull this out of the dash. We added some Stinger Ultimate Roadkill to the back of this panel, make it a little bit more heavy, a little bit more robust. To put this back in, come behind your windshield wipers, go as far to the driver's side as you can so that you can get these T-clips in. There's two on this side. As soon as those go in, it's gonna shift like a ½ inch towards the passenger side, and you can push these in. Listen for that click. Yep, that's what we want to hear. This installation is not the final installation we are doing to this. Because this is the lab, this thing is going to get taken apart again in a little bit, and it's going to get RCAs and power wire and all those other fun things put in. So for now, we're going to remove a couple of these clips, mainly like the 200 that we have right here in the center, so that when we go to pull this back out, it makes it easier to get back out. And then once we get this all done, we'll put these back in so that we don't get any issues with it. The joys of piano black is that, well, you're gonna touch everything, you're gonna make it extremely dirty. The nice thing is that most of this you'll never see again. But man, it looks so good when it's clean. So for the back side of this, we fixed all the broken pieces that the car dealer did, and we added our sound treatment to it. The rattle, as it turns out, was coming all the way from over here in the air vent. They had broken the air vent off of this bezel. It's supposed to be attached, and the air vent itself is very loose inside of its mount. This whole area here was falling apart on us. Make sure to get it behind the windshield wiper. So the same as the gray, start at the far over to the driver's side, get the T in, push it over to the passenger side, and snap it into place. All right. It's just so shiny. I mean, it's like you guys, oh my gosh, it's so shiny.
It's like a mirror.
It is a mirror.
A dirty mirror.
Alright, slide the unit into place. The blue bag of parts has our screws. There are 200 size screws. Definitely use a magnetic screwdriver. The stubby fat ones go into the bottom. The punishment for putting it as close as you can to here is that it's a pain in the butt to get the screws in. There's no doubt about it. All right.
Complaining too much.
And then the skinny screw goes here in the top. Screw that into place, and there you have it. He's decided he wanted to tilt it some towards him, which is no big deal. We just have to slide the screwdriver into the side.
The top one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Wow, that's like right on. Might have to put some foam on the bottom of that.
Oh, that's better.
All right. Well, according to you got to wipe over here.
That's fine.
I'll wipe it off. It looks terrible. All right, guys. There you have it. Let's power this thing back up.
I think we should tilt it back in. No, it doesn't look like that.
What are you talking about?
Just kidding.
There you have it, the 9500 installed using the iData VW1 kit. The reason why we wanted to use this kit is this page here. We get our vehicle information page now, so it's going to tell us what our doors are, if we get a check engine light, our battery voltage. Tires aren't showing up because we need to roll. Once we start rolling, they'll be in place. We can come over here, we can turn on and off different features. We can then come back to home, all apps, We can see our climate control screen. It's in Celsius right now. We can change that in the menu. You go to applications, Maestro settings, vehicle features, vehicle settings, units, temperature, so Fahrenheit, there we go. All right, so those are all the features that are built into the factory radio. We can still have access to those. And then lastly, gauges. And there we go. So now when he's doing his 0 to 60, he can watch his thing go crazy and have all kinds of fun and excitement. Oh yeah! But with the iData, we get to keep all of those features, which is really nice. And there you have it. From unboxing it, looking at the harness, checking out the operating system, to finally getting it into the dash, fully functional and working. It's a lot of fun. We hope you guys enjoyed this series. If you like these, of course, let us know in the comments. We try to do more if you do. That's all we got. Fernando, if you please.
On to the next one, guys.
No, let's not say we did. You guys have a great day as always. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.